Welcome to Lost at 3 a.m. Put your phone down, close your eyes, and let this be the last thing you hear tonight. Tonight, we're heading north, past the Gerald Mountains, past the Imperial borders, into a frozen land of dragons, ruins, and half-forgotten legends. This is Skyrim, a world where snow never stops falling, where every path leads to something old and broken, and where even the quietest village has a secret buried beneath it. It's not just a video game, not really. It's a place, one that exists in the corner of your memory, even if you haven't visited in years. The sound of the wind through the pines, the crackle of a campfire, the hush of footsteps echoing through an ancient barrow. Maybe you played it once, or maybe you've started a dozen different characters and never finished the main quest. Either way, the world waits. Always the same, always different. Tonight, we're going to wander through it together. No dragons to fight, no quests to complete, just the stories behind the world, how it was built, what it holds, and why it still lingers, long after you put the controller down. So picture a sky dark with snow, mountains rising in the distance, a flicker of torchlight in the ruins below. And let's begin. You don't start Skyrim as a hero, you start in a cart, bound, silent. A prisoner like any other, nobody knows your name, nobody cares, and the first thing the game does is march you toward an execution block. There's no prophecy carved into stone, no ancient text pointing to your birth, just a man with an axe and your head on the list, until the sky breaks open. The dragon isn't just a plot twist. It's a reminder that this world is older than anyone remembers, that there are forces buried beneath the snow that don't care about your title or your past. And when you finally unlock the power inside you, the voice, the Thuum, it's not a celebration, it's a question. What do you do with that kind of power in a place that's already breaking apart? The Nords call you Dragonborn. Some revere you, some don't believe it at all. The Greybeards summon you like a whisper on the wind, but even they don't tell you what to become. They just teach you the words. The rest is up to you. You're not the chosen one in the traditional sense. You're not handed a crown or a glowing sword. You're dropped into a world at war, where ancient magic is waking up, and nobody's sure what side you're on. And that's the thing. Skyrim doesn't need you to save it. It just gives you the choice to try. You can fight Alduin, or ignore him. You can become a hero, or vanish into the mountains and never speak to another soul again. The game doesn't push you toward greatness. It just lets you exist and lets you decide what that existence means. Being Dragonborn isn't about prophecy. It's about potential, about finding power in your voice and choosing what to do with it, or choosing nothing at all. Because in Skyrim, even when the world starts to remember your name, it never stops feeling like you're just a small piece of something much older, much colder, and far bigger than you. Skyrim feels ancient the moment you step into it, not because of any one landmark or a particular quest, but because of how it's built. The bones of the world are old, stone ruins half buried in snow, temples clinging to mountaintops, crumbling towers where the walls have forgotten what they were guarding. It's a place shaped by time and by design. When Bethesda started building Skyrim, they didn't just want a map. They wanted a landscape that told stories without needing to speak. A place where everything, the way the roads curve, the way the weather shifts, the way the wind howls across an empty hill, feels like it's been there forever. There are 9 holds, each one with its own climate, culture, and way of surviving the cold. Whiterun sits in the center, wide open and exposed, like a battlefield waiting to happen. Windhelm is frozen solid, stone and snow pressed into a city that feels as closed off as the people living in it. Markarth is carved into the cliffs, Dwemer stone and waterfalls, beauty layered over violence. No two places feel the same, and in between them, wilderness. Mountains so high you can see the edge of the sky, forests thick with mist, quiet lakes that reflect nothing but the stars. The roads are long, sometimes empty, and yet somehow never boring, because around every corner is something. An abandoned shack, a broken wagon, a shrine left untouched for years. You were never meant to rush through it. Skyrim was built for wandering, for slowing down, for looking at the horizon and thinking, what's over there? And even if you've seen the whole map, it still surprises you. A cave you missed, a village that never showed up on the compass, a ghost that doesn't speak, but just stands, waiting. That's the difference. Most games give you a place to explore. Skyrim gives you a place to get lost. And somehow, even when you turn the game off, it keeps existing, quietly, waiting, like the snow never stopped falling. There's the story Skyrim tells you, and then there's everything it doesn't. The civil war, the dragons, the shouts. That's the surface. But under the snow, buried in old books and silent ruins, there's another version of this world. One that doesn't explain itself. One that you only find if you're paying attention. You start to notice it in the margins. A ruined Dwemer city, humming with machinery no one knows how to fix. A Falmer ambush in a cave that used to be a temple. A strange stone on a mountain, etched with symbols from a language you don't recognize. The game never pushes you toward these things. They're just there, waiting. The Dwemer disappeared overnight. No one knows why. And the Falmer, once a proud snow-dwelling race, are now blind, broken, and angry, hiding in the dark corners of the world they lost. Their history isn't written down. It's left in blood and architecture. The Nords talk about Sovngarde like it's fact, but the gods in Skyrim aren't always listening. Talos was a man once, or maybe he wasn't. The elves say the Empire worships a lie. The Empire says the elves are rewriting history. And the game doesn't tell you who's right. Even the dragons have their own myths. Alduin isn't just a boss fight. He's the World Eater, a force of time itself, prophesied to bring about the end and begin it all over again. But even the Greybeards don't know if stopping him was the right thing to do. Maybe the world needed ending. That's what makes Skyrim feel real. Not the combat, not the quests, but the silence in its history, the unanswered questions, the sense that this is a world that's been through too much and doesn't feel the need to explain any of it to you. Because the truth is, most of the people in Skyrim don't know their own past. They argue about it, they forget it, they make up parts of it, just like we do. And when you walk through the ruins, read the inscriptions, find the broken pieces left behind, it's not just lore, it's memory, echoes. The world doesn't care if you understand it, but if you listen, sometimes it whispers back. There's something about the way Skyrim sounds. It's not just the music, though that helps. Jeremy Soul's score doesn't overwhelm. It doesn't tell you what to feel. It just drifts in and out, like wind through trees. A quiet cello when you step into the mountains. A single voice rising as you approach a forgotten ruin. A soft piano when the snow starts falling harder than before. It's not about drama, it's about presence. Even when there's no music at all, the game is never silent. You hear the crunch of boots in deep snow, the rustle of pine trees in the wind, water moving slowly under ice, wolves howling somewhere just out of sight, and that low, distant rumble when a dragon circles, unseen but close. Skyrim doesn't need to shout. It just lets the world breathe. The best moments aren't always in battle. They're in the stillness between things, walking through a forest at dusk, hearing your footsteps echo in a cave that hasn't been entered in centuries, standing outside at night, watching the aurora flicker above a sleeping village. No dialogue, no music, just air. Even in cities, the noise is quiet. Smiths hammering in the distance, water wheels turning, a bard playing a familiar tune in a corner you've passed a dozen times. Life is happening around you, but never asking for your attention. And when the silence does break, when the music swells or a shout shakes the sky, it means something, because Skyrim earns its noise by respecting its quiet. That's what gives the game its weight, not the graphics, not the size of the map, but the feeling that this world exists whether you're there or not, that the mountains don't move for you, that the wind was blowing before you arrived, and it'll keep blowing long after you leave. It doesn't just sound real, it feels still. And sometimes that stillness is exactly what you need. You can finish Skyrim without ever really playing it. The main quest is there, dragons, shouts, the end of the world, but it doesn't ask for your full attention. In fact, it's easy to forget it's even happening, because before you know it, you've gone off the path. You meant to speak to the Jarl in Whiterun. Instead, you found a cave. Inside, a journal, torn pages, mentions of a lost sibling, a strange artifact, a trap that was never meant to be sprung. You follow it, not because the game tells you to, but because something about it feels personal, quiet, sad. And when you step back out into the daylight, it's hours later, and you're somewhere completely new. Skyrim doesn't care what order you do things in. It trusts you to find your own story. Sometimes it's a haunted lighthouse. Sometimes it's a letter in a coat pocket, never sent. Sometimes it's a man in the woods, alone, who won't tell you what he did, but asks you to bury him all the same. These aren't quests in the traditional sense. They're memories, tiny moments scattered across the landscape, and they're often more human than the fate of the world stuff ever was. Because the real magic of Skyrim isn't in saving the realm. It's in stumbling across someone else's story and realizing it's already over. All you're doing is walking through the aftermath. You're not the center of this world. You're just a part of it. And somehow, that's what makes it feel so big. You don't have to become a hero. You don't have to be anything at all. You can just walk. And the game will keep whispering things to you, one forgotten quest at a time. Skyrim is a game built on solitude. You're the lone wanderer, the outsider, the Dragonborn. You travel through frozen fields, haunted ruins, and ancient cities, and most of the time, no one really knows who you are. You pass through people's lives like smoke, helping, interfering, or simply passing by. But every now and then, someone follows you. At first, it seems simple. A follower is just another sword in the fight, another inventory space for loot. Lydia, your first housecarl, is given to you almost like a reward. She's sworn to protect you, whether you want her there or not. Her lines are few, repeated often, but somehow, even through the repetition, she becomes familiar. There's something strangely comforting in the way she sighs when you drop too much gear on the ground. Something grounding about the way she walks silently behind you for hours without asking questions. And then there are others, Faendal and Sven, Serana with her centuries of quiet sadness, Cicero, who dances dangerously along the line between comic relief and something deeply unsettling. Each of them brings more than just skills to battle. They bring history, mood, atmosphere, and sometimes they change the tone of the entire game just by being there. Some players travel with the same companion for dozens of hours. Others switch constantly or go alone. But once you've spent time with one, really spent time, you start to notice what it means to share the journey, not just in combat, but in the quiet stretches in between, in the long hikes across the tundra, in the nights you spend camping beneath the stars. The followers in Skyrim aren't deep in the traditional sense. They're not designed to grow or change. They won't comment on the philosophical weight of your decisions, but their presence becomes part of the rhythm of the game, a rhythm you carry with you, the sound of footsteps behind you in a narrow cave, the slight shuffle as they draw their weapon in the dark, the fact that, even in the loneliest parts of the world, you're not entirely alone. And when they die, if they die, it's often sudden, accidental, and quiet. There's no dramatic farewell, no epic cutscene, just silence where there used to be footsteps, and you realize how much space they took up just by being there. Skyrim never tells you to care about its companions. It doesn't reward you with big speeches or loyalty missions, but over time, in their quiet way, they become part of your story, not because the game insists on it, but because you've shared the road. And in a world as cold and vast as Skyrim, sometimes that's enough. Dragons are everywhere in Skyrim, They circle over mountaintops. They crash down in the middle of towns. They sleep in ruins that haven't seen light in centuries. But what makes them powerful isn't just their fire or their size. It's their language. The Thu'um, the voice, isn't magic in the usual sense. It's speech. Words spoken in a tongue so ancient and so forceful that the sound alone reshapes the world. To shout in the dragon language is to bend reality. Time slows, fire erupts, storms come. And the strange part is, you're not casting a spell, you're just speaking. It's a power that's tied directly to who you are in the world. Not a learned skill, but something woven into your blood. The game calls you Dragonborn, and because of that, these words, these shouts, become yours to use. But the more you use them, the more it raises the question, why do you have this power? And what does it mean to speak a language no one else remembers? There's something poetic in the idea that words, when spoken with enough truth, can shake mountains, that the world itself listens, not to volume, but to meaning. Every shout is short, just a few syllables, fus, ro, da, but each one carries centuries of memory, words that were first spoken by dragons, passed down through monks who spend their lives meditating on single phrases. You don't need to understand the lore to feel it. The first time you use a shout, it doesn't feel like casting. It feels like unleashing, like calling something up from a place deeper than language. And every time you absorb a dragon's soul, you don't gain XP. You remember a word. That's the key. The magic of the voice isn't something you create. It's something you recall, like it was always inside you, waiting to be spoken again. Alduin, the World Eater, speaks the same language, but where your voice slows time or cools storms, his ends things. His words are endings, his shouts are erasure. You're not just fighting a dragon, you're confronting a being who understands the world on a level you're only beginning to access. And that tension lingers throughout the game. Every time you speak a word of power, you're borrowing from something older than men, older than elves, a language that doesn't ask, it commands, a sound that bends snow and sky in silence. It's not flashy, it's not even particularly loud, but in a world full of swords and fire, Skyrim quietly gives you a different kind of strength, your voice and the right to use it. Skyrim was released in 2011, that's more than a decade ago, and yet it's never really gone away. Most games have a moment, a peak, a few months in the spotlight, then a gradual fade into memory. But Skyrim is different. It doesn't fade, it mutates, reappears, gets re-released on new platforms over and over, sometimes as a joke, sometimes not. At this point, it's almost self-aware. Bethesda's own marketing leans into it. The memes, the endless ports, the fact that one day it might be playable on a smart fridge or a calculator. But what keeps Skyrim alive isn't just the jokes, it's the players. The modding community around Skyrim is one of the most dedicated in gaming history. People have spent thousands of hours building new quests, overhauling mechanics, redesigning cities, even voicing new characters. Some mods are tiny, a tweak to lighting, a texture upgrade, a new type of flower. Others are full games in themselves, layered into the world like they've always belonged. There are mods that turn Skyrim into a horror game, a dating sim, a medieval survival sandbox. You can fight Thomas the Tank Engine instead of a dragon. You can turn every guard into a macho man impersonator. You can also, if you want, make everything more immersive, more beautiful, more subtle, sharper sounds, colder nights, darker caves. Skyrim became a canvas, not just a world to play in, but a world to reshape. And then there are the memes. I used to be an adventurer like you, became part of the internet's bloodstream. The cheese wheels, the overpowered sneak attacks, the way everyone, at some point, accidentally shouted their companion off a cliff. Skyrim didn't just become popular, it became culturally sticky, recognizable even to people who've never played it. That's rare, and it doesn't happen because of polish or marketing. It happens because the world Bethesda made was open enough to let people leave their mark on it. The base game is just the beginning. What's kept Skyrim alive is the way it allows itself to be rebuilt, again and again, not just in code, but in memory, in screenshots, in inside jokes between friends who haven't played in years, but still know exactly what you mean when you mention Bleak Falls Barrow. It's not a perfect game. It never was. But it's become something bigger than itself. A living, shifting story, shared across time, held together by community, nostalgia, and the quiet pull of a world that always seems to be waiting just on the other side of sleep. Some games end when the credits roll. You put down the controller, you walk away, and the world fades behind you. But Skyrim doesn't really do that. Even if you haven't played in years, the shape of it stays with you. You still remember the curve of the road up to Whiterun, the sound of the main theme as the fog lifts from a river valley, the way the snow falls slower at night, or how the sky turns pale green just before dawn. It's not just a place you played through, it's a place you lived in for a little while. That's the strange magic of it. Skyrim doesn't push you to keep playing, it just waits. It lets you come back when you want to, and when you do, it's all still there. Your house in solitude, your favourite boots, that one dungeon you never quite finished. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You might notice new things, an innkeeper you never talked to before, a book you always skipped, sitting open on a desk you passed 100 times, and suddenly it feels like the game wasn't frozen in place, it was just quiet. Waiting for you to listen again. That's what makes Skyrim feel less like a game and more like a memory. Not because of the graphics or the mechanics or even the story, but because of the feeling, the atmosphere, the quiet way it lets you be alone without ever making you feel lonely. You don't need to be Dragonborn. You don't even need to shout or fight or finish the main quest. You can spend the whole night walking, watching the stars shift overhead, listening to the wind press against the trees, letting the world exist around you without asking anything in return. And maybe that's why people keep coming back, not for the adventure, but for the quiet, for the sense that this world somehow remembers you too. Thanks for spending your night with Lost at 3 a.m. Sleep well, and we'll see you next time.